My name is Elena Vance. I am 29 years old. And the day my grandfather's will was read, my parents didn't just try to cut me out of the fortune. They tried to edit me out of existence. It started the moment I landed back in Charleston. The air in the Low Country is heavy. It wraps around you like a wet wool blanket. I hadn't been back in 2 years. Not since the last time I tried to visit Grandpa Silas and was stopped at the wrought iron gates by my father, who told me I was too unstable to see him. The funeral was less a ceremony and more of a press junket. That is the only way to describe it. It was a production directed by my mother, Caroline, and starring my younger sister, Bella. I stood in the back of the old stone chapel, watching them in the front pew. They were dressed in bespoke mourning wear, the kind that looks effortless but costs thousands. Bella was dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her makeup suspiciously flawless, while a videographer, hired not a friend, circled the pews to capture heartbreaking angles for her TikTok audience of 3 million. I was a ghost at my own grandfather's funeral. When I walked toward the gravesite, aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in a decade looked right through me. I heard the whispers ripple through the crowd like wind through the Spanish moss. That's Elena, the difficult one, the one who broke Silas's heart. My father, Richard, didn't even look at me until the service was over. He walked past me to shake hands with a senator, his grief slipping off his face the moment he needed to network. When he finally acknowledged me, it wasn't with a hug. He just nodded, tight and dismissive, and whispered, "Try to blend in, Elena. Today is about the Vance legacy. Don't ruin the aesthetic." Legacy. That word hung in the humid air, heavy and poisonous. The reading of the will took place 2 days later at the law offices of Thorne and Associates. The conference room was frigid, smelling of old leather and furniture polish. I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, my hands folded so tight my nails dug into my palms. Across from me, Bella was scrolling on her phone, the tragic performance from the funeral replaced by a bored impatience. My parents sat flanking her like bodyguards protecting the crown jewels. Marcus Thorne, my grandfather's attorney, sat at the head of the table. Marcus was a man made of granite and silence. He adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat, and the room went dead quiet. "We are here to read the last will and testament of Silas Vance," Marcus said. His voice was gravelly, the kind of voice that demanded you listen. He went through the standard assets first: the estate on the Battery, the vintage car collection, the diversified stocks. It all went to my father, Richard. My mother squeezed Dad's hand, a little victorious smile playing on her lips. They were safe. The country club membership, the galas, the image, it was all safe. Then came the liquid assets. "To my granddaughter, Bella Vance," Marcus read, his eyes staying glued to the paper, "I leave the sum of $15 million. The air left the room. 15 million. My mother let out a gasp that sounded like she was winning an award, clutching her chest. Bella looked up from her phone, her eyes wide, a slow, predatory grin spreading across her face. 15? She whispered. "For real?" "You deserve it, Princess," my dad said, sliding a stack of transfer documents toward her. The way they looked at her, it wasn't just pride, it was relief. She was their retirement plan, their proof that they had raised a winner. Then the silence stretched. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I didn't move. I didn't blink. I knew what was coming. I had prepared myself for zero. I expected nothing. But I wasn't prepared for the sheer malice of how they would deliver it. Marcus turned a page. He looked at me, and for a second the stone mask slipped. I saw something in his eyes. Not pity, respect. "As for my granddaughter, Elena Vance," Marcus began. My father cut him off. He leaned back in his chair, shrugging, his voice loud and casual. "Bella gets the 15 million, Elena. As for you, you can earn your own." "Grandpa Silas didn't want you to have a dime. He said he was done with you," my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with that fake Southern sweetness she used when she wanted to draw blood. "You chose your little tech life in Seattle over family, honey. This is what he wanted. He told us he didn't even know who you were anymore." I felt the room tilt. I stared at the dark wood of the table, listening to them rewrite the history of the only man who had ever truly seen me. They were erasing the hours we spent in his workshop, the coding books he bought me, the way he championed my nerdy little projects when they laughed at them. They were stealing my grief and replacing it with shame. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the heavy table. But I just sat there. I sat straighter. "Do not let them see you bleed," I told myself. "Is that all?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, calm, detached, like it was coming from a stranger. My dad smirked. "That's all, Elena. You can go back to the rain now. We'll handle the business." That was the moment. That was the exact second the atmosphere in the room shifted. Marcus Thorne pushed his chair back. The sound of wood scraping against the floor was loud, violent. He stood up, towering over the table. He wasn't looking at his papers anymore. He was looking at my parents with an expression of pure, cold fury. "Actually, Mr. Vance," Marcus said, "that is not all." My father frowned. "Excuse me?" Marcus reached into his briefcase. He moved with the slow deliberation of an executioner. He pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. It was heavy, cream-colored, and sealed with red wax. He set it on the table. It landed with a heavy thud that echoed like a gavel. "Mr. Silas Vance gave me explicit instructions," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the confusion. "This codicil was to be kept confidential from everyone, including his son, until the day his will was read with all immediate family present, especially his granddaughter, Elena." My mother's face drained of color. "What is that?" she snapped. "There's no second document. Silas told us everything. He signed everything with us." "Grandpa was slipping near the end," my dad added quickly, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "There's no need to read anything else. If he wrote something while he was confused—" "He was not confused," Marcus interrupted. He broke the wax seal. The crack was sharp in the silent room. He unfolded several pages covered in my grandfather's distinct, jagged handwriting. "To my granddaughter, Elena Vance," Marcus read. The room went so quiet I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. "I leave full controlling interest in Aegis Systems, the company I have quietly built and invested in over the last 7 years, as well as my personal investment accounts associated with it held separately from my joint accounts with my son." My father blinked. "Aegis? You mean that inventory software?" "Aegis Systems," Marcus corrected, locking eyes with my father, "is not just inventory software. It is a predictive AI platform designed to model economic shifts for small businesses. It currently holds patents in 30 countries. It has back-end contracts with 3 major shipping conglomerates." Marcus paused, letting the weight of the next words hang in the air like a guillotine. "Its current valuation is conservatively estimated at significantly more than the $15 million you just handed to Bella." My dad finally stopped smirking. "That's impossible," he blurted out. He stood up, hands slamming onto the table. Dad barely knew how to use an iPad. He didn't build a tech giant. He owned a hardware chain. Marcus looked at my father with a mixture of pity and disdain. "With respect, Richard, he hired the right people. He invested in the right minds. And he insisted everything connected to Aegis stay in his name only, specifically to prevent meddling." "He was senile!" my mother shouted. She was standing now, too, pointing a manicured finger at Marcus. "He was old! He was sick! This is fraud! Elena put him up to this!" "Sit down, Caroline," Marcus said. He didn't raise his voice, but the command was absolute. "I will not— I said sit down!" Marcus pulled another item from the envelope. It was a small silver flash drive. Because Silas anticipated this exact reaction, he left a video statement, dated, time-stamped, witnessed by 2 independent psychiatrists confirming his mental competency. Marcus plugged the drive into his laptop and turned the screen toward us. And there he was. My grandfather filled the screen. He looked thinner than I remembered, his skin pale, but his eyes were sharp, blue steel. He was sitting in this very room wearing his favorite fishing vest. "Hello, Richard." "Hello, Caroline," Video Silas said. His voice was raspy but steady. My mother made a choked sound, covering her mouth. "If you are watching this," my grandfather continued on the screen, "it means you have just tried to cut Elena out of this family. It means you gave Bella the cash and told Elena she was worthless. I know you. I know how you think." On screen, he leaned forward. It felt like he was looking right through the lens, right at me. I love all my grandkids, but only one of them shares the way my mind works. Elena understands that value isn't about the packaging, it's about the code inside. Richard, Caroline, you spent years managing my life, managing my access to my own granddaughter, telling me she was too busy to call, too ashamed of us to visit. I felt tears prick my eyes. He knew. All this time I thought he believed their lies. I saw the messages disappear from my phone, Grandpa said. I saw the call logs deleted. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. His face hardened. The kindness vanished, replaced by the grit of a man who had built an empire from a single toolbox. You want the money? Fine, keep the cash. Buy your vacation homes. But Aegis, the future, that belongs to Elena. And if you try to fight this, if you try to drag her name through the mud or challenge my capacity— He paused. A small, dry smile touched his lips. Marcus has the rest of the files. The bank statements. The transfers you made from my joint accounts without my permission. The consulting fees you paid yourself to fund Bella's lifestyle. It's all there. Consider this the only warning you're going to get. The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just detonated, leaving everyone deaf and disoriented. My mother was trembling. My father was staring at the blank laptop screen, his face a mask of shock and calculating fear. Bella looked from her parents to me, and for the first time in her life, the filter was off. She looked scared. She was clutching her $15 million folder like a shield, but she knew. We all knew. The balance of power had just shifted. I slowly stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced them to hold me. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. They seemed smaller now, shrinking under the weight of the truth. I'll take those files now, Marcus, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. My father turned to me, his eyes narrowing into slits. You knew about this, he hissed. You manipulated him. You snuck around behind our backs. I picked up the silver flash drive from the table. It was warm. I closed my fingers around it, feeling the hard metal edge biting into my palm. It felt like a key. It felt like a weapon. I didn't know anything, I said quietly, but Grandpa knew everything. I turned to walk out. I didn't look back at Bella. I didn't look back at the parents who had just tried to discard me. I walked out of that conference room and into the humid Charleston heat, clutching the future in my hand. But as I stepped onto the cobblestone sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A notification, then another, then 10, then 100. I looked down. Bella had posted a picture of her tear-stained and tragic, with the caption, "Family betrayal is the deepest wound. Please pray for us as we deal with manipulation and elder abuse. The truth will come out. #justice for Silas." The comments were already rolling in. "Stay strong, Queen." Who would do that to you? Expose them. I looked up at the law office window. I knew this wasn't over. They weren't going to let go of Aegis without a war. They had the audience, they had the narrative, and they had the rage of people who had just been caught. But I had the code, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I didn't go back to the family estate. I couldn't. That house, with its white pillars and manicured lawns, wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene where my history had been murdered. Instead, I checked into a generic business hotel near the Charleston waterfront, the kind of place with beige walls and sealed windows. I threw the deadbolt, chained the door, and sat on the edge of the bed with the only two things Marcus Thorne had let me take from the office: the silver flash drive and a battered, heavy leather satchel that smelled like pipe tobacco and sawdust. Inside the satchel was the artifact. It was an old laptop, a brick of a machine, easily 7 years old. The casing was scratched, the corners dented. To anyone else it looked like junk you'd find at a garage sale, but to me it was the Holy Grail. I opened the lid. The screen was covered in a thin film of dust. I pressed the power button, holding my breath. For a terrifying 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then, a whirring sound, the groan of an old fan coming to life, and the screen flickered a pale, ghostly blue. It didn't ask for a password, it asked for a key. "Input sequence?" the prompt blinked. I smiled. My eyes stung. I knew the sequence. Of course I knew it. It wasn't a birthday or a street address. It was the first line of code I ever wrote that actually worked, the one Grandpa Silas had framed on his workshop wall. I typed it in. Print, hello, world, Silas. The screen went black, and then streams of data began to cascade down the monitor, green, white, gold. It was beautiful. Suddenly, I wasn't in a hotel room anymore. I was 14 years old, sweating through my t-shirt in the humidity of Grandpa's hardware store back office. Flashback transition. I remembered that summer clearly. While Bella was at cheer camp, learning how to smile for a crowd, I was sitting on a milk crate, staring at this very laptop. Grandpa Silas had bought it from a liquidation sale. "They say the processor is shot, Ellie," he had told me, wiping grease off his hands with a rag. "But I figure you can coax some life into it." My mother hated it. She would sweep into the store looking out of place in her silk sundresses and wrinkle her nose. "She's gonna ruin her eyes, Silas. She needs to be outside. She needs to be social. Bella is making friends. Elena is making spreadsheets." "Elena is making sense," Grandpa had snapped back in that low rumble he used when he was losing patience. One afternoon, I ran up to my father, Richard, holding a printout. I had built a crude program, ugly duct tape code, that tracked the sale of hurricane shutters and plyboard relative to weather reports. "Look, Dad," I said, shoving the paper at him. "If Grandpa orders the plywood 3 weeks before the season starts, instead of when the warning hits, he saves 12% on shipping. That's $4,000. My father barely glanced at it. He was watching Bella practice a dance routine in the driveway. "That's nice, honey," he said, his voice flat. "But you can't run a business on pretend math from a teenager. Leave the logistics to the adults." He patted my head like I was a golden retriever and turned back to Bella. "Chin up, princess. Smile like you mean it." I had crushed the paper in my hand, ready to throw it away. But then I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder. Grandpa Silas took the crumbled ball of paper, smoothed it out on his workbench, and put on his reading glasses. He studied it for 5 minutes, then 10. Then he looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Show me," he said. "Show me how to make it do this for the generators, too." Back to present. In the hotel room, the cascade of data slowed. The desktop loaded. It wasn't just the inventory system I remembered building. It had evolved. Grandpa had kept working on it, or hired people to work on it, building on the foundation I laid. Aegis Systems wasn't just tracking hammers and nails anymore. I clicked through the files, my heart rate spiking. It was pulling real-time data from global shipping lanes. It was analyzing weather patterns in the Atlantic, labor strikes in Southeast Asia, raw material shortages in Brazil. It was an oracle, a predictive engine that could tell a small business owner in South Carolina that they needed to stock up on copper wire 3 months before the price surged. "Oh, Grandpa," I whispered, "you did it." The valuation Marcus gave was wrong. Aegis wasn't worth $20 million. If this code was proprietary, if this algorithm was stable, it was worth hundreds of millions, and my parents had no idea. They thought it was a toy. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, shattering the moment. It was an email notification. Subject, urgent, cease and desist. I opened it. It was from a law firm in Atlanta, Vance and Partners. My father had moved fast. "Miss Vance, effectively immediately, you are ordered to surrender all physical and digital assets belonging to the estate of Silas Vance. We have filed an emergency injunction claiming undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. Any attempt to access, alter, or copy company data will be considered a federal offense." I laughed, a short, sharp sound. They were trying to scare me. They were trying to bully me, the way they always had. "Go to your room, Elena. Give that back, Elena. It's not yours, Elena." But they made a mistake. They thought I was just accessing the data. They didn't realize I was the data. I turned back to the laptop. "Okay, Silas, let's see what you were trying to hide from them." I bypassed the main dashboard and opened the command terminal. Grandpa said in the video that he saw money leaving. That meant there was a trail. I typed in a search query for the joint accounts. The screen populated with a spreadsheet. At first glance, it looked normal. Maintenance costs, staff salaries, restocking fees. But the dates were interesting. February 12th. A withdrawal of $45,000 for consulting services R. Vance. That was the same week my parents went to Aspen, May 4th. A transfer of $22,000 for marketing assets. That was the day Bella posted her unboxing video of those limited edition designer bags from Paris. I started typing faster, my fingers flying across the keys. I cross-referenced the business expenses with Bella's Instagram archive. It was a perfect match. Every business trip was a vacation. Every marketing expense was a luxury car lease or a wardrobe update. They hadn't just been living off their own salaries. They had been bleeding the company dry. They were parasites, feeding off the host until it was nearly dead. And then I found it. The smoking gun, a hidden partition in the drive labeled simply, The Leech. I opened it. It wasn't code. It was a digital ledger, manually entered by my grandfather. He had been tracking it for 2 years. Every dollar they stole, he wrote it down. June 10th. Richard asked for a loan for the roof. I said no. Money withdrew anyway from account B, $15,000. August 2nd. Linda claims the country club dues increased. Checked with the club. Lie. $8,000 gone. December 25th. No visit from Elena. Richard says she is in Europe. Checked flight logs. Lie. She is in Seattle. They sent her away. I stopped breathing. He knew. He had known the whole time. I stared at that entry. They sent her away. The grief hit me then, harder than at the funeral. He had been alone in that big house, watching his money disappear and his family lie to his face, documenting it all in silence, waiting for the day I would come back and find this. Suddenly, the laptop screen flashed red. Alert. Remote access attempted. IP address local. Source Vance_estate_Maine. I froze. They had an IT guy. They were trying to remotely wipe the server. If they got into the mainframe before I secured the admin privileges, they could delete Aegis. They could delete the ledger. They could delete the proof. My father wasn't just sending legal threats. He was trying to burn the library down. I looked at the progress bar on the screen. Accessing. 10%? 20%? I had maybe 2 minutes before they breached the firewall. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't understand systems. You want to fight, Dad? I whispered, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Okay, let's see how you handle a logic bomb. I began to type. The logic bomb I planted was simple, really. It was a recursive loop script. As soon as the external IP tried to breach the admin privileges, the system turned back on itself, flooding their server with millions of junk requests per second. On my screen, the red alert bar vanished, replaced by a calm, blinking green cursor. I imagined the scene over at the Vance estate, my father shouting at some poor IT consultant, my mother pacing the floor with a glass of Chardonnay, the screen in their study freezing, then going black. I had bought myself time, maybe 12 hours, maybe 24, but I made a miscalculation. I was thinking like an engineer. I thought in binary, access or no access, truth or lie. I forgot that my family didn't operate in binary. They operated in the gray areas of perception. If they couldn't break the code, they would break the coder. The attack didn't come through the laptop, it came through my phone. It started around 8 p.m. I had ordered room service, a club sandwich I was too nauseous to eat. I was sitting on the floor, cross-referencing Grandpa's ledger with the bank statements, when my phone lit up. Instagram, @BellaVance_official is live. My stomach dropped. I shouldn't have clicked it. I knew better. But I clicked it anyway. Bella was sitting in her bedroom at the estate. The lighting was soft, golden hour perfection. She wasn't wearing her usual heavy glam. She looked pale, fragile, wearing an oversized sweater that made her look like a child. Hey guys, she whispered to the camera. The viewer count was ticking up. 10,000, 25,000, 50,000. I wasn't going to do this. Mom and Dad told me to keep it private, but I'm just so scared. She wiped a tear that wasn't there. You guys know my grandpa passed away this week. It's been so hard. But what's harder is my sister. She paused for effect. The comment section was a blur of broken heart emojis and we love you, Bella. Elena came back, Bella continued, her voice shaking, and she's not well. She hasn't been well for a long time. She showed up at the funeral and made a scene, and now she's hacked into Grandpa's old computer files. She's suffering from these paranoid delusions that Grandpa left her this secret company. It's manic. It's really scary. I stared at the screen, my mouth open. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. She was taking the truth, the will, the company, and twisting it into a symptom of mental illness. We're trying to get her help, Bella said, looking directly into the lens. but she stole some sensitive family documents and ran away. Elena, if you're watching this, please come home. Mom and Dad aren't mad. We just want you to be safe before you hurt yourself or someone else." The video ended. Then the notification started. My DMs filled up with venom. "Why are you torturing your family? Give the files back, you psycho. I hope you rot." Then came the doxing. Someone found my old LinkedIn profile. Then they found my email. Then, terrifyingly, someone posted a photo of the hotel lobby I was staying in. "Spotted. The crazy sister is at the Marriott on the waterfront." My hands started to shake. I felt the walls of the hotel room closing in. This was their strategy. Isolate me. Make me doubt my own reality. Make me look so unstable that no judge would trust me with a billion-dollar algorithm. I turned off my phone and threw it under a pillow. I curled up against the bed frame, clutching Grandpa's laptop. For a dark moment, I wondered if they were right. Am I crazy? Did I imagine the video? Is this just a game I'm playing because I'm jealous? Then a sharp knock on the door. I flinched. Boom, boom, boom. "Elena, open up." It wasn't my father, it wasn't the police. It was a woman's voice, raspy and familiar. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing there, looking furious and wrapped in a rain trench coat, was Nana Ruth. Technically, Ruth wasn't my grandmother. She was Silas's younger sister, my great-aunt. But she had lived in the guest cottage on the estate for 30 years, running the household while my mother played hostess. Ruth was the one who snuck me cookies when Mom put me on a diet. Ruth was the one who bandaged my knees. I undid the chain and opened the door. Ruth didn't say hello. She marched in, locked the door behind her, and threw her wet coat on the chair. She looked at me, eyes red, hair messy, trembling, and she sighed. "They're doing a number on you, aren't they, kid?" "Did you see the video?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I saw it," Ruth scoffed. She pulled a flask from her purse and took a swig, then handed it to me. "Bella's a better actress than she is a human being. Drink, it's brandy. You look like you're in shock." I took a sip. The burn helped. "Why are you here, Ruth? If Dad knows you're here—" "Richard doesn't know anything," she snapped. "He's too busy meeting with that shark lawyer, looking for a way to declare Silas mentally incompetent posthumously." She reached into her oversized tote bag. "I brought you something. Something Silas told me to keep safe until the vultures started circling." She pulled out a stack of leather-bound notebooks. Not digital files. Real paper journals. The smell of old ink and tobacco filled the sterile hotel room. "Silas kept journals," Ruth said, her voice softening. "Every day for 50 years. She opened one marked, Year 2023. "Read this." I looked at the page she pointed to. Grandpa's handwriting was shaky but legible. "October 14th. Richard asked for power of attorney again today. He shouted, said I was losing my grip. I told him the only thing I'm losing is my patience. I worry about Elena. They keep telling me she doesn't call, but I know my Sophie. They are blocking her. I have to protect the work. I have to protect her inheritance before my mind actually does go." I ran my fingers over the words. I know my Sophie. The gaslighting shattered. The doubt evaporated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was the only one who had been listening. "He knew," I whispered. "He knew they would try to say he was senile." "He knew," Ruth affirmed. "And he knew you'd need ammunition that wasn't on a computer screen." Ruth sat on the edge of the bed and took my hand. Her skin was rough, calloused from gardening. "Elena, listen to me. They are going to come at you with everything. They will say you abused him. They will say you manipulated a dying man. But you have the truth, and now you have the history." We spent the next 3 hours going through the journals. It was a chronicle of betrayal. Grandpa had documented every lie my parents told, every dollar they siphoned, every time they used Bella to guilt-trip him. But the peace didn't last. Around midnight, the hotel room phone rang. Not my cell, the landline. I picked it up. "Hello? Miss Vance?" It was the front desk clerk. He sounded nervous. "I'm so sorry to disturb you, but there are police in the lobby and a lawyer." "A Mr. Thorne? He says he needs to speak with you immediately." "Send him up," I said, my heart hammering. "Only him." 3 minutes later, Marcus Thorne walked in. He looked exhausted. His tie was undone, his suit rumpled. He nodded at Ruth, not surprised to see her. "We have a problem, Elena," Marcus said, skipping the pleasantries. "Did they file an injunction?" I asked. "Worse," Marcus said. He pulled a court document from his jacket. "They filed an emergency motion for a psychological evaluation." "For Grandpa?" "No." Marcus looked me dead in the eye. "For you." I stepped back. "What?" "They are claiming that you are mentally unstable and a danger to yourself," Marcus explained rapidly. "Bella's video, the erratic behavior at the funeral, your history of isolation in Seattle. They are building a case that you are suffering from a manic episode and that you coerced Silas into changing his will while you were delusional." "That's insane," I said. "That's a lie." "It doesn't matter if it's a lie," Marcus said grimly. "It matters if a judge believes it enough to grant a temporary conservatorship. If they get control over you, Elena, they get control over Aegis. They don't need to hack the password if they own the person who knows it." He looked at his watch. "The hearing is at 9 a.m. tomorrow. If we don't present undeniable proof that Silas was competent and that you are sane and that they are the ones lying, you lose everything. They'll lock you up in a facility until you give them the keys." I looked at the journals on the bed. I looked at the laptop humming with the algorithm. I looked at Ruth, who was gripping her cane like a baseball bat. They wanted to paint me as the crazy girl? Fine. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady, colder than it had ever been. "Do you still have the video, the full unedited cut?" "Yes." "And Ruth, do you have the dates of those bank transfers memorized?" "Down to the cent," Ruth replied. "Good," I said. I picked up the laptop. "They want a show? Let's give them a show. We're not just going to the hearing tomorrow to defend me. We're going to burn their house down." The Charleston County Courthouse is a beautiful building. Massive stone columns, marble floors, the smell of history and authority. It's designed to make you feel small. And that morning, walking up the steps with Marcus and Ruth flanking me, I felt microscopic. My parents had arrived first. They were playing the part of the grieving, concerned family to perfection. My mother, Caroline, was wearing a modest navy dress, holding on to my father's arm as if she might faint from the sorrow of it all. Richard looked stoic, the weary patriarch trying to save his troubled daughter. Bella wasn't there. They had kept her away to protect her brand from the fallout, but her presence was felt in the flashing cameras of the local press gathered outside. They didn't look at me as we entered the hearing room. They looked through me. The hearing was closed to the public, thank God. Just us, the lawyers, and Judge Halloway, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, who looked like she had absolutely no patience for family drama. Their lawyer, a man named Sterling, who wore a suit that cost more than my car, started the opening arguments. He was smooth, deadly smooth. "Your Honor," Sterling began, his voice dripping with false empathy, "we are not here to punish Elena. We are here to protect her. We have affidavits from family friends detailing her erratic behavior. We have the video of her sister pleading for her safety. We have evidence that she illegally accessed encrypted estate files while in a state of manic delusion. We believe she is a danger to the assets of the estate, and more importantly, to herself." He placed a thick binder on the judge's bench, the psychological evaluation request. "We are asking for an emergency temporary conservatorship," Sterling concluded, "to freeze the assets and place Miss Vance under the medical care she so clearly needs." I watched my father. He was nodding slowly, a look of pained resignation on his face. He was so good at it. For a second I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump across the table and shake him. "How can you do this to your own blood?" But I felt Ruth's hand on my knee under the table. She squeezed it. "Wait." Judge Halloway looked over her glasses at me. "Miss Vance, your counsel may respond." Marcus Thorne stood up. He didn't have a binder. He didn't have a speech. He just had his laptop and a single HDMI cable. "Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice like granite, "the petitioners claim that Silas Vance was incompetent when he changed his will. They claim my client, Elena, is suffering from delusions regarding the value and nature of the estate." He plugged the cable into the court's AV system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. "We are not here to argue opinions," Marcus continued. "We are here to present the testimony of the only witness who actually matters, Mr. Silas Vance himself." Sterling jumped up. "Objection! Mr. Vance is deceased. This is hearsay." "It is a video codicil, Your Honor," Marcus countered calmly. recorded, notarized, and authenticated by forensic experts as part of the estate planning process. It is admissible." The judge waved her hand. "Overruled. Play it." The room went silent. Marcus hit the space bar, and for the second time, Grandpa Silas filled the room. But this wasn't the short clip from the will reading. This was the full hour-long session, and he wasn't just talking. He was holding papers. "My name is Silas Vance," the video Silas said. His voice echoed off the high ceilings. "And I am recording this because I know my son, Richard. I know that when I die, he will try to take what isn't his." On the screen, Silas held up a document. It was a bank statement. "August 14th, Silas read. $25,000 transferred to an offshore account in the Caymans under the name RV Holdings. I did not authorize this." My father stiffened in his chair. The color began to drain from his face. Silas picked up another paper. "September 3rd, $12,000 for renovations." There were no renovations. That money paid for the lease on Caroline's Mercedes. My mother let out a sharp gasp. Sterling, their lawyer, was frantically whispering to them, but they weren't listening. They were paralyzed. "I have been tracking the theft for 3 years," Silas said to the camera. His eyes were blazing. "I let it happen because I was old and I was tired, and I didn't want a war while I was still breathing, but I will not let them steal my life's work from Elena." Then the video cut to a close-up of Silas. He looked directly into the lens. "Richard, if you are watching this, it means you challenged the will. It means you tried to say I was crazy. Or worse, you tried to say Elena was crazy." A chill ran down my spine. He had predicted the conservatorship play. "You always called people crazy when you couldn't control them," Silas said, his voice dropping to a growl. "But Elena isn't crazy. She's the only one of you who is awake. And the company, Aegis Systems, it's not just a company. It's a test. A test you failed." Marcus paused the video. The freeze frame showed Silas looking righteous, like an Old Testament prophet in a fishing vest. "Your Honor," Marcus said into the stunned silence, "in addition to this testimony, we have a forensic accounting report that was completed this morning, cross-referencing the company servers with the personal accounts of Richard and Caroline Vance." Marcus slid a new document across the table to the judge. "It shows a systematic embezzlement of company funds totaling over $4 million over the last 5 years. It also shows tax fraud, as these personal expenses were written off as business deductions." The air in the room changed. It wasn't a civil hearing anymore. It felt criminal. Judge Holloway flipped through the report. Her face grew harder with every page. She looked up at my parents. The pity was gone. The patience was gone. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet, "is your client aware that perjury in a probate court is a felony? Is he aware that filing a false motion for conservatorship to cover up financial crimes is ill-advised?" Sterling looked at the documents, then at his clients. He saw the sweat on my father's forehead. He saw my mother's trembling hands. He realized he had been lied to. He closed his briefcase. "Your Honor, I need a recess to confer with my clients." "No recess," Judge Holloway snapped. She slammed the file shut. "I have seen enough. The motion for conservatorship is denied with prejudice. The will stands. The codicil stands." She leaned forward, locking eyes with my father. "And Mr. Vance? I am forwarding these transcripts and the video evidence to the district attorney's office. I suggest you don't leave town." My father slumped in his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. The arrogance, the poise, the Vance legacy, it all evaporated in seconds. My mother started to sob, and this time it wasn't for show. It was the terrified sound of a woman realizing the party was over. I stood up. My legs felt solid, strong. I looked across the table at them. I expected to feel happy. I expected to feel triumphant. But mostly I just felt light. The weight of their expectations, their judgment, their gaslighting, it was gone. "Elena," my father croaked. His voice was weak. "Elena, please. We can explain. It was complicated. We did it for the family." I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw a small, scared man who had spent his whole life spending money he didn't earn to impress people he didn't like. "You're right, Dad," I said softly. "It was for the family, just not the family you thought." I turned to Marcus and Ruth. "Let's go. We have work to do." As we walked out of the courtroom, the heavy oak doors swinging shut behind us, I heard my mother's voice rising in panic, asking if they were going to lose the house. I didn't stop. I walked out into the bright Charleston sunlight. The reporters were still there, shouting questions. "Did you win? What happened inside?" I put on my sunglasses. I didn't answer them. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone anymore. I took out my phone. I had one call to make, not to the press, not to Bella. I opened the Aegis app on my phone. The green status bar was pulsing. System secure. "Okay, Silas," I whispered to the wind. "You built the engine. Now let's see how fast it can go." The war didn't end with a bang. It ended with the sound of an auctioneer's gavel. 6 months after the hearing, I stood across the street from the Vance estate. The iron gates were open, wide open, for the first time in decades. Strangers were walking across the manicured lawn, carrying lamps, paintings, and boxes of silverware. The estate sale sign was staked into the grass where my father used to yell at the landscapers if a single azalea was out of place. It was a court-ordered liquidation. The forensic accounting report had triggered a cascade of lawsuits. The IRS, the creditors, the unpaid contractors, they all came for their pound of flesh. To pay back the millions they had embezzled from Aegis, my parents had to sell everything. The house on the Battery, the beach cottage, the cars, the jewelry. I watched a man walk out carrying my mother's favorite antique vanity mirror. It looked smaller in the daylight, just a piece of wood and glass. It wasn't a legacy, it was just furniture. My parents had already left Charleston. They fled in the middle of the night, 2 weeks before the sale. They moved to a small rental in a retirement community in Arizona, chasing anonymity and cheaper rent. Richard Vance, the man who used to lecture me about executive presence, was now working part-time as a bookkeeper for a pool cleaning service. Caroline, who wouldn't be caught dead in off-the-rack clothing, was now shopping with coupons. They didn't call me. I didn't call them. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. It was just final, like a radio frequency that had turned to static. But Bella's fall was louder. The internet is a cruel arena. When the court documents became public record, her comments section turned into a war zone. The sympathy she had farmed turned into outrage. People realized the luxury life she flaunted was stolen money. Sponsors dropped her overnight. The free clothes stopped coming. The brand trips were canceled. She tried to pivot, posting a tearful apology video titled "My Truth," but the algorithm is unforgiving. Without the aspirational wealth, without the glossy backdrop of the estate, her audience simply scrolled past. She lost 1 million followers in a month, then 2. I didn't gloat. Watching her empire crumble didn't feel like a victory. It felt like watching a tragedy I had tried to prevent. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, a different kind of empire was rising. Aegis Systems moved out of the digital shadows and into a brick-and-mortar office in Midtown. We had glass walls, a team of 50 engineers, and a lobby that smelled of fresh coffee and ambition. But we didn't operate like a typical tech giant. We operated like Silas Vance. Our software wasn't just for the Fortune 500. We rolled out a Main Street version, a simplified dashboard for family-owned hardware stores, bakeries, and mechanics. We helped them predict when to buy flour before a wheat shortage. We warned them when a supply chain bottleneck was coming so they wouldn't run out of parts. Every time a small business owner emailed us saying, "You saved my shop this quarter," I felt Grandpa Silas smiling. That was the real inheritance. Not the money, though the company was now valued in the billions, but the impact. One Tuesday evening, about a year after the trial, I was sitting in my office overlooking the city lights. My inbox pinged. Subject, coffee. Sender, Bella Vance. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have deleted it. I could have blocked her. But I remembered the little girl who used to ask me to braid her hair before our parents turned us into rivals. I replied, "Thursday, 10 a.m. She came to the office. She looked different. The heavy contour makeup was gone. She was wearing jeans and a simple blouse. She looked tired, but she looked real. We sat on the balcony. For the first 10 minutes, we just watched the traffic. "I'm working at a PR firm now," Bella said finally. Her voice was quiet. "Entry level. I write press releases for a dental hygiene company." "That's steady," I said. She laughed, a dry, self-deprecating sound. "Yeah, it pays the rent. I live in a studio apartment with 2 roommates. It's loud. It smells like ramen." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were watery. "I hated you, you know," she admitted, "for years. Mom and Dad always said you were the smart one, the difficult one. I felt like a prop. I had to be the pretty one because I couldn't be the smart one. And when Grandpa left you everything, it felt like he was confirming it, that I was just a prop." "He didn't think you were a prop, Bella," I said softly. "He just knew you were trapped in their show. He wanted to break the stage so you could actually live." She wiped her eyes. "Well, the stage is definitely broken." "I can help you," I offered. "I can set you up with—" "No," she interrupted. She shook her head firmly. "No money, no handouts. I need to do this. I need to know that I can pay my own electric bill. I need to know who I am when no one is watching." She stood up and held out her hand. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, for the video, for everything." I took her hand. It wasn't a movie-perfect reconciliation. We didn't hug and cry and become best friends instantly. But the ice cracked. The door was open. "Don't be a stranger, Bella," I said. "I'm trying not to be," she replied. 3 years later, New York City. I was standing backstage at a tech conference, the red circle of the stage glowing under the lights. My palms were sweating. I adjusted the microphone pack on my waist. "You're up, Miss Vance," the stage manager whispered. I walked out. The applause was polite, curious. To them, I was just another CEO in a blazer. They didn't know the story. I clicked the remote, and a photo appeared on the massive screen behind me. It wasn't a graph. It wasn't a revenue chart. It was a grainy, pixelated photo of an old, battered laptop sitting on a workbench next to a half-eaten sandwich. "My grandfather," I began, my voice steadying, "was a man who sold hammers and nails. He didn't know how to write Python. He didn't know what a neural network was. But he knew something that most venture capitalists forget." I looked out at the sea of faces. He knew that the most valuable data point in the world isn't a stock price. It's belief. I walked them through it. The isolation, the discard pile, the family that tried to edit me out because I didn't fit their aesthetic, and the secret bet one old man made on a granddaughter who preferred code to pageants. For a long time, I said, I thought the goal was to prove them wrong. I thought success was about forcing the people who rejected you to admit their mistake. I paused. I touched the watch on my left wrist. It was Silas's old watch. Leather strap cracked, face scratched, oversized on my arm. But I realized something in that courtroom in Charleston. The point isn't to win their approval. The point is to stop auditioning for people who have already decided not to cast you. The room was silent, dead silent. If you are the Sophia or the Elena or the black sheep in your family, if you are the one they talk over at dinner, if you are the one they say is too much or too weird, I smiled, and for the first time I felt completely free. Don't wait for them to give you a seat at their table. They never will. Go to the garage, find some wood, build your own table, and then invite the world to sit with you. I clicked the slide to the final image, the Aegis logo, and underneath it a small quote from Grandpa's journal, "I know my Sophie." Thank you. The applause didn't wash over me this time. It went through me. I looked up towards the ceiling, past the stage lights, past the rafters. Print, "Hello World, Silas." We did it, Grandpa. We finally wrote the code that mattered.